Topic 4. Citizens, Society, and the State. Government and politics are only parts of the many facets of a complex society. Religion, ethnic groups, race, social and economic classes all interact with the political system and have a tremendous impact on policy making. These divisions, theoretically out of the realm of politics, are called social cleavages. Bases of social cleavages. What mix of social classes, ethnic and racial groups, religions, and language does a country have? How deep are these cleavages, and to what degree do they separate people from one another? Form social boundaries. Which of these cleavages appear to have the most significant impact on the political system? Cleavages and political institutions. How are cleavages expressed in the political system? For example, is political party membership based on cleavages? Do political elites usually come from one group or another? Do these cleavages block some groups from fully participating in government? Comparing citizen-state relationships. Governments connect their citizens in a variety of ways. We may successfully compare government-citizen relationships by categorizing and in turn noting differences and similarities among categories. For example, citizens within democracies generally relate to their government differently than do citizens that are governed by authoritarian rulers. Or, different countries may be compared by using the following categories. Attitudes and beliefs of citizens. Do citizens trust their government? Do they think that the government cares about what they think? Do citizens feel the government affects their lives in significant ways? One important measure of connections between the citizens and their government is political efficacy, or a citizen's capacity to understand and influence political events. If citizens have a high level of political efficacy, they believe that the government takes their input seriously and cares about what they have to say. They also believe in their own abilities to understand political issues and to participate in solving problems. If citizens lack political efficacy, they may not believe that it is important to vote, or they may try to ignore the government's efforts to enforce laws. Political socialization. How do citizens learn about politics in their country? Do electronic and print media shape their learning? Does the government put forth an effort to politically educate their citizens? If so, how much of their efforts might you call propaganda? How do children learn about politics? At any specific time, a person's political beliefs are a combination of many feelings and attitudes, including both general and specific identifications. At the deepest level, people identify with their nation, ethnic or class groups, and religions. At a middle level, people develop attitudes toward politics and the ways that government operates. On a narrower level, people have immediate views of current events or political topics that the media, family, friends, or schools may call to their attention. Types of political participation. In authoritarian governments, most citizens contact government through subject activities that involve obedience. Such activities are obeying laws, following military orders, and paying taxes. In democracies, citizens may play a more active part in the political process. The most common types of participation is voting, but citizens may also work for political candidates, attend political meetings or rallies, contribute money to campaigns, and join political clubs or parties. Voting behavior. Do citizens in the country participate in regular elections? If so, are the elections truly competitive? If not, what is the purpose of the elections? What citizens are eligible to vote, and how many actually vote? Do politicians pay attention to elections, and do elections affect policy making? Factors that influence political beliefs and behaviors. Consider the important cleavages in the country. Do they make a difference in citizens' political beliefs and behaviors? For example, do the lower classes vote for one political party or the other? Are women's beliefs and behaviors different from those of men? Are younger people more likely to vote as older people are? Do people in rural areas participate in government? Level of transparency. A transparent government is one that operates openly by keeping citizens informed about government operations and political issues, and by responding to citizens' questions and advice. In a 2009 memo to the heads of the executive departments and agencies, U.S. President Barack Obama asserted, "Government should be transparent. Transparency promotes accountability and provides information for citizens about what their government is doing. My administration will take appropriate action consistent with law and policy to disclose information rapidly in forms that the public can readily find and use." This ideal does not have to be limited to democracies, but low levels of transparency are often found in authoritarian governments, and corruption also tends to be lower in countries where government activities are relatively transparent. Social movements. Social movements refer to organized collective activities that aim to bring about or resist a fundamental change in existing group or society. Social movements try to influence political leaders to make policy decisions to support their goals. Members of social movements often step outside traditional channels for bringing about social change, and they usually take stands on issues that push others in mainstream society to reconsider their positions. For example, early leaders in the women's suffrage movement in Great Britain and the United States were considered to be radicals, but their goals were eventually recognized and accomplished. The modern civil rights movement in the United States consisted of collective action that influenced state, local, and national governments to support racial equality. The African National Congress, ANC, a political organization that sought to overthrow the state-supported system of apartheid in South Africa, eventually pushed the government to lift the decades-old ban and release ANC leader Nelson Mandela from prison. The success of social movements varies from case to case, but even if they fail, they often influence political opinion. Civil society. Civil society refers to voluntary organizations outside of the state that help people define and advance their own interests. Civil society is usually strong in liberal democracies where individual freedoms are valued and protected. The organizations that compose it may represent class, religious, or ethnic interests, or they may cross them, creating strong bonds among people that exist outside of government control. Political scientists are interested in civil society since it helps to define the people's relationship to and role in politics and community affairs. Groups in civil society may be inherently apolitical, but they serve as a cornerstone of liberty by allowing people to articulate and promote what is important to them. In many ways, civil society checks the power of the state and helps to prevent the tyranny of the majority, i.e., the tendency in democracies to allow majority rule to neglect the rights and liberties of minorities. Advocacy groups, social networks, and the media all may exist within civil society, and if they are strong enough, they may place considerable pressure on the states to bring about reform. By the early 21st century, a global civil society has emerged, with human rights and environmental groups providing international pressures that have a significant effect on government-citizen relations. Some argue that a global cosmopolitanism, a universal political order that draws its identity and values from everywhere, is emerging. This global civil society can take shape in non-governmental organizations, NGOs, or more informally through people that find common interests with others that live in far corners of the globe. Non-governmental organizations are national and international groups, independent of any state, that pursue policy objectives and foster public participation. Examples are Doctors Without Borders and Amnesty International. Societal globalization, then, may change the definition of who are us and who are them, and reshape a world that formerly defined reality in nationalistic terms. By their very nature, authoritarian states do not encourage civil society, and they often feel that their power is threatened by it. Civil society does not necessarily disappear under authoritarian rule, as is illustrated by the survival of the Russian Orthodox Church and social reform movements in Eastern Europe during the decades of communist rule. Generally, civil society is weak in most less developed and newly industrializing countries. Individuals tend to be divided by ethnic, religious, economic, or social boundaries, and do not identify with groups beyond their immediate surroundings that might help them articulate their interests to the government. One step in the development of civil society is civic education, in which communities learn their democratic rights and how to use those rights to give meaningful input to political institutions. One positive sign in less developed countries is the growing involvement of women in NGOs that deal with a variety of health, gender, environmental, and poverty issues.